Hey guys, my name is Josh Arroyo. You might know me from Instagram as Arroyo Handcrafts. Welcome to the International Association of Woodcarvers. We're going to be talking about art, philosophy, and Procreate.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the International Association of Woodcarvers. Today is Saturday, the 3rd of February in 2024, and we appreciate you all taking time out as usual to come in and meet with us on Saturday afternoon. Appears to be getting a little warmer outside in most places, so again, thank you for taking a break from what you were doing today to come in and meet with us. Today on our meeting, we're going to have Josh Arroyo on. He's coming to us from Florida, from Orlando, Florida. Before we get started with Josh, though, I want to tell you a little bit about our lineup, what we've got coming up. Just as a reminder, next week we're going to have Isaac Middlemiss on. He's known as the Woodcarving Man. If anybody follows him on Instagram or TikTok, he has quite the following out there on those two platforms. So check him out. On the 17th of February, we got Angie Casino. She's going to be coming in. She's known as Whittle Angie Art on Instagram, so check her out. On February 24th, we're going to have Alec Lacasse in. He's going to talk about his Fundamentals of Woodcarving School. If any of you all are not familiar with that, make sure you go out, Google either his name or Fundamentals of Woodcarving School and check it out. It's another good opportunity out there to learn from Alec. I think he has a bunch of different projects out there that are available, and you're able to work on those at your own pace. So make sure you check that out. And then on the 2nd of March, we're going to have Jim Nesbitt in. And then on the 9th of March, we're going to have James McCain in. He has a group that he calls Eagles for Vets or Eagles for Veterans. And he's going to be coming in with us and talking about that. Talk to you a little bit about some workshops that's coming up. On the 8th of March, Janet Cordell is going to be teaching another class on woodcarving the girl. And then on the 9th of March, Dave Stetson is going to be coming in and teaching a class on woodcarving man on the floor. If you're interested in either one of those workshops, reach out to those instructors. Again, Janet Cordell or Dave Stetson. They'll tell you what you need to sign up for the class and get you signed up. Make sure you do that early enough. I think Dave's has a rough out that you can purchase from Dwayne Gosnell. So you may want to try to do that early so that you can get in that class. Check out those things out on Woodcarving Academy. If you haven't been out there, you can subscribe there to all the past classes and stuff that are available at woodcarvingacademy.com. But they also have a link out there for the active workshops, and those are live workshops with the instructors. So make sure you check that out. Before we get started with Josh, I am going to turn our meeting over to Dave Stetson. Dave usually does our words of wisdom. And Dave, if you'll give me just a second, I will spotlight you. And we'll go ahead and turn it over to Dave.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I don't know if I'm not gotten any feedback on these words of wisdom, but if I'm just blowing hot air and wasting your time, we don't have to do this. But my word for this week is learn as if you will live forever, but live like you will die tomorrow. I've been thinking about that all week. And it goes pretty deep. So learn as if you will live forever, but live like you might die tomorrow.
Thank you, Dave. I'll let you know if you'll go out and look at the comments on our YouTube channel on the past videos. There's a lot of people that go out there and comment about Dave's words of wisdom. So even though people may not give you feedback on here, they're giving it to us on YouTube. So go out and check that out. Again, today on our meeting, we got Josh Arroyo. Josh, if I'm pronouncing your last name wrong, let me know. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and we'll get started with our meeting. All right.
You didn't butcher it as bad as some people have.
I never know. I never know.
I'll teach you the how to roll your Spanish R's when we're off record. But thanks for having me, everybody. Hello out there. You'd think after 3 years of COVID or whatever it is that we'd be used to these Zoom things, but I'm still just as uncomfortable as I was on day one. Thanks for having me. If you had said 3 years ago that, or 10 years ago when I started carving, that I'd be in a room filled with people talking about my thoughts, I'd have thought you were crazy. Much less a room filled with some of these names in here. I was talking to Blake when we kind of did the run through earlier this week, how privileged we are as carvers, that you can't, I was raised a Mets fan. I make no apologies for that, but I was raised a Mets fan and I grew up with Mike Piazza, and I'll never meet Mike Piazza. And that's that. And I'll never meet Michael Jordan and any of these heroes. But we can meet the guys that taught us everything about wood carving, either through their books. Dave's still around, Bob Hershey's still around, and they're on this call. And the fact that that's even an option, we should consider ourselves blessed. So I thought long and hard about what to talk about, because again, I'm pretty humble in that there's nothing that I'm going to say that hasn't probably been said better by people more qualified to say it. But I figured I'd tell you a little bit about my backstory, how I got into wood carving, a little bit about my artistic philosophy. And then I'm going to end with a little bit of how I go about designing an ornament using digital drawing. So I'm a big fan of the app Procreate. I use my iPad for a lot of the design stuff that some companies have hired me for, and some t-shirts that I've designed. And so I think it lends itself well to wood carving and helping come up with better patterns. And we'll throw in some fun stuff there. So I was born in New York. Born in Queens. We lived in Brooklyn till I was about 2, and then we moved to Florida. Story that goes around at Thanksgiving. The local gang in the 80s in New York set fire to our neighbor's house, thinking it was ours. We had some police friends that told us that they thought my mom was calling the cops on their illegal activities. So that's exciting. Dad had enough, so we moved down to Florida and have been here ever since. I went to UCF, go Knights, second largest university in the country. We've got something to hold to. Got a degree in math education and then a master's in ed psych. So I was a math teacher for 10 years, taught high school. Seen everything from twerking to TikTok and everything in between. So I've got plenty of stories if you want to hear them. But through all of that, I've kind of been an artist my whole life. I grew up and I come from a family of artists. My grandfather was a wood turner and a furniture maker. My dad was he went to art school. My cousins went to art school. My cousin is the quintessential starving artist. He lived in a van for several years while he designed t-shirts. So if that doesn't qualify you as an artist, I don't know what does. So it's in my blood, as it were. Growing up, I wanted to be a Disney animator. I think that comes from being in Orlando. I'm 20, 30 minutes on a good day from the mouse and all his glory. So I spent a lot of time in the parks growing up. Kind of a Disney fanatic. I've read everything I can about the history of the parks and animation, and it's definitely influenced a lot of how I think about things. But like many kids that grew up in the 80s and some of the older generation knows, is you couldn't make a living as an artist. And that was the advice that my dad had given me early on, even as an artist himself. He came from a time where he didn't have Instagram and graphic design, and it was a niche market if you were going to do it. And so he encouraged me to do something else, and I did. But it never left. It never left. I always stayed close. And the biggest artistic endeavor that I undertook that was consistent was I was actually a performing magician. So not musician, but magician, card tricks, coin tricks. Did corporate events, holiday parties, birthday parties, the occasional celebrity party here and there. And Dave Stetson found this out and asked me to show you guys a card trick in this thing. So You didn't sign up for it, but you guys are going to get a card trick today. So, Dave, you around? You ready to help me out with this since it's your fault?
Go for it, buddy.
All right. So I'm going to tilt this down here. Brought a deck of cards for you, Dave. And I just want you to name one that you see, preferably one with some room on it. Not a jack, queen, or king is what I'm getting at.
Okay.
What do you got?
10 of clubs.
10 of clubs.
You want more room?
No, you're good. Now, Dave, we're going to make this 10 of clubs distinctive. All right. And I want you to give me your favorite word. Your favorite word.
Wood carving.
Wood carving. Original, Dave. Real original.
Yeah.
We might have guessed that. We might have guessed that.
I could have gone whittling.
Could have gone with whittling. I would have approved right there on the shirt. All right. Now, I'm going to bring this down here. Leave this somewhere in the middle. Now, if I did anything with this deck of cards, I did magic. I started doing magic when I was 8 years old, and I stopped right at COVID. So I'm 34, so I'll let you do the math. If I manipulate these cards in any way, shuffle them, mix them up, you might accuse me of cheating, and rightfully so. All right, rightfully so. While other boys were playing sports and chasing girls, I was practicing how to shuffle a deck of cards and deal the second card from the top. But Blake, do me a favor. We're going to do something anyway. Give me a number between 10 and 20, but make it kind of high for me. Don't make it easy on me.
17.
17. Now, I told you, if I mess with these cards at all, you accuse me of cheating. You accuse me of using card control, which is the phrase we use in Magic. So I'm not going to do anything that involves card control. I'm going to do something else, something we're all too familiar with, knife control. Right. We all carve. We know that to do a good carving, you have to have good knife control. So I brought all my knives. I know everybody's geeking out, but I've got this one, Janet Cordell's son actually made. I got my Helvey knife. We all got one of those sitting in our back pockets. I've got my another blade I put in a piece of elk antler. But I'm going to go with my original knife. This was my OCCR Mike Shipley knife, old reliable. This is the one I started with. We're going to try and find Dave's card with wood carving on it at the 17th position. Let's see if we can make this work using just knife control. Here we go. 1, 2, 17 cards. Now, if this is 17 cards, then this should be Dave's card with wood carving on it. Now, I know many of you are dying to do. You're wondering, if you were here, could you count those cards? Well, if you were here, you could count the cards, but you'll have to trust me. I'll count them for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 cards. So that's a pretty good trick. How'd that work for you, Dave?
That's pretty damn good, buddy.
Yeah, that's good. Good stuff.
Knife control.
Do we get to find out how to do that?
Oh no, you got to pay for the tutorial. But all right, so back to the wood carving. So I did magic for a long time.
You have a website for a tutorial?
No, I do them. I don't teach them. But yeah, that was the one artistic thread that I had the whole way through. And if I learned anything, is it plays a role in wood carving. The principles of magic are principles of art, and principles of art are principles of wood carving. And you don't get one without the other. How I got into wood carving, though, specifically, and I'll kind of come back to the magic stuff, was actually an ex-girlfriend. It wasn't a great relationship. It should have ended very soon after it started, but I think we've all had a couple of experiences like that where we hung on a little too long. And to cope, I took a sewing class. Go figure. All right. It was offered in town, and I was like, I do magic. Sewing is something that, if you're going to make your own props, a lot of people don't know this, but in the magic community, if a magician that's been doing it long enough has had to make a prop because it doesn't exist. And if you got an idea and no one's making it, you make it yourself. So I learned to sew, which is a great place to meet ladies. If you're 20 years old and you're looking to meet 65, 70-year-old ladies. I was the youngest person in the room by 3 or 4 decades. They were incredibly kind. They taught me a lot. But I highly recommend it. I still highly recommend it. If you don't know how to sew, you're missing out on some of the joys. So sewing was the distraction. Now, sewing led to leather work. I had a buddy of mine who was working on a routine, another magic trick, and it was called a nest of wallets. Basically, you vanish a coin, and it appears inside of a wallet, inside of a wallet, inside of another wallet. And these were leather wallets. And I thought, hey, I can sew. I can make leather wallets. $2,000 later, 6 sides of cow later, a bunch of tools later, I learned very quickly sewing is nothing like leather work. They're not even in the same universe in terms of what it takes to produce a good product. But I learned to do leather, and that helped with wood carving again, because when it came time to make a strop, when it came time to rig something up for sharpening, which I'll show you guys in a bit, I had all the equipment. I can make a sheath. I can do things to hold tools. It all worked itself out. Leathercraft led to whittling, because we were still in the same relationship that should have ended. And at Christmas, I said, I want to learn to whittle. And her parents were kind enough to, for Christmas, get me this book. And it's Chris Lubkeman's Little Book of Whittling. And they got me a knife, and they got me some crepe myrtle branches and some cedar. Neither of which I recommend to a new carver learning to carve. Crepe myrtle is not great. And cedar was way too hard for a first timer that didn't know how to sharpen. But this book was everything. And it's been gone through 1,000 times. If you ever get a chance to meet Chris, we took a little road trip up to Lancaster. He's in PA. He's one of the kindest men you'll ever meet in your life. He spent 3 hours with me, my wife patiently letting me absorb everything. Bought one of his pieces. It sits in our kitchen. It was a blast. And that Christmas was the thing that got me into wood carving. Now, whittling, I think, is very different from wood carving. There was a step after that. This was long after that relationship ended, and I met my now wife. We were taking a trip. I had whittled branches, and it was always tree branches. We took a trip up to North Carolina. We were staying at the Pisgah Inn. And if you've ever been up on the Blue Ridge Parkway near Mount Pisgah, about 45 minutes outside of Asheville, there's an inn up there right on the ridge. We do a lot of hiking throughout the year up that way. And we were staying there, and a guy came in with dark black hair, and he dropped off a box, talked to the lady at the front desk that we were checking in, and then he left. And I looked in the box, and it was a bunch of wood carvings. And these were not tree branch carvings. These were some of the most beautiful carvings I'd ever seen, because I'd never seen carvings in found wood. We go into the gift shop up at the Pisgah Inn, and I picked up 2 of this gentleman's carvings. And this is not the one that I picked up, but this collection has grown. I now have 9 of his pieces. My wife indulges me now because they are all over our living room, the bedroom. There's 2 over here on the wall. There's 1 over there, and there's the 1 in my hand. His name is Lewis Holloway. And Lewis, I'm sure many of you know his name. He's out of Pickens, South Carolina. He's got a couple of students that do similar work, but I just fell in love with the way that this looked. And I thought, I got to learn how to do this. And this led to carving found wood, which eventually turned into caricature and took us to where we are now. So that's kind of my backstory. Never got rid of the art piece. The Procreate stuff that I'll mention in a bit. I was always a doodler and an artist, but that was kind of my journey to wood carving. So all that to say, there's a movie Phenomenon with John Travolta. If you've never seen it, it's a great movie. But there's a quote at the end of that movie. It's like, everything is on its way to somewhere. And that's been true in every artistic endeavor I've ever done. Everything I've learned has led to the next thing. And I keep calling back. I learned, if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen these ornaments that I started doing this Christmas. You know, I wouldn't have been able to do the hat edition had I not learned to use a sewing machine. I could have done it by hand. It wouldn't have looked as good, but you know, this is 10 years out from learning to sew, and it's come full circle. And I've got other ideas on incorporating sewing into wood carvings and stuff. So, you know, don't be afraid to, you know, pursue other interests, and make yourself. One of the things in magic, I was always told, if you want to be interesting, you have to be interested. So, you know, you can't. I think there's a tendency to live in your vacuum, like wood carving. This is all I do. But I think to be a better wood carver, you're probably going to be served as well by learning about history, learning about other things that make you interesting or that you're interested in, because it'll automatically find its way to into your work. As far as my art philosophy goes, I always find this interesting. If you've ever been to a gallery, every artist kind of has their message, their artistic philosophy, and I say that very humbly because it's still hard for me to think of myself as an artist. I don't know why. We all are. We're all producing art, but for whatever reason, the mind's limitations kind of have their grip. So I don't know how to do anything if I'm not going to do it properly. So, you know, I was always kind of raised. I was raised with a dad who was, you know, one of the best guys I know. I'm a lot more like him than I ever thought I'd be. And he raised me, if you're going to do something, you do it the right way. And I don't believe in half-assing things. If I'm going to dive in, I'm going to dive deep. So my friends have kind of, they think of me as like a Renaissance man because I do all these things reasonably well. And it's not intentional. It's not like I tried. It's just, if I'm going to learn something, I'm going to learn the proper way to do it from people that are in a position to teach it. And so I offer that to you guys. It's like, what are you doing wood carving for? Is it for an occasional gift? Is it just to pass the time? All that's going to influence, you know, how you approach your art. You kind of got to decide what you're going to do. And then I think you have to commit to doing it as good as you possibly can. And I'm a believer in striving for perfection. I know that's not, you know, maybe weird for a teacher to say that, or an ex-teacher, but I think every carving I go into, I don't go into it with the knowledge that, like, if it doesn't work out, I'll throw it away. I have no intention of throwing it away. It's gonna work, and it's gonna look good. And I'm gonna try it, and I'm gonna think about it. And if it doesn't look good, okay, some of them don't turn out, but that's never the intention at the start. And I don't know that that's healthy, but that's how I think about it. You know, funny story. If you've never had the option or the opportunity in life to kind of see yourself connected to a historical figure, you're missing out. I've had two instances in my life where I was reading something about someone from history, and I thought, holy crap, him too. You know, I was reading a biography of Lincoln. This was just before I got engaged to my wife, and I was reading a snippet on Lincoln's thoughts about marrying Mary Todd. And I'm reading Lincoln's letters, and it's like, oh my God, he was thinking the same stuff before he got married that I was thinking when I was getting married. Like, that's trippy. It's a weird feeling when it's like that Lincoln's dead and I'm here, you know, what, 150 years, 200 years later, and we're having the same thoughts. But the story I wanted to share was, we were in North Carolina again, and we were at the Biltmore Estate. And if you've ever been to the Biltmore, you're near Asheville, the Biltmore Estate every so often will do these exhibitions. And they had this exhibition on Leonardo da Vinci, and it's an immersive experience. You kind of walk in, and there's his paintings are everywhere. They're completely around you, 360. They're on the floor. There's music playing, and they take you through everything. His engineering accomplishments. They have reproductions of his engineering designs and his art. And in the middle of this, they're showing quotes from his writings. And I'm sitting there with my wife. The music's playing. There's maybe 20 people in the room, and a quote comes on the wall. And it said, the greatest evil that can befall an artist is for his work to appear good in his own eyes. And I read that and it hit me like a brick. And I looked at my wife, and my wife was already looking at me because she reads faster than I do. She's looking at me, I'm looking at her, and in her, in her humorous little way, she's like, "You're Da Vinci," which, we had a good laugh, but I sat there and I'm like, oh my God, like this obsession with making it perfect, for striving for something that's good in every single thing that makes me sick sometimes, was the exact thing that this guy was going through while he was designing war machines and Mona Lisas and all this stuff that's sitting in these museums. It was a weird moment, but it made me feel better. I don't hate that aspect of my personality. I'm not saying that that's a way to do everything. I remember talking to Dave about this on social media maybe last year, asking for advice on how to deal. This was before this, and Dave had said, "Be careful, because the crazy ones that take that too far cut their ears off." I'm paraphrasing, but I never forgot that, Dave. I never forgot it, and you're 100% right. So, but anyway, that's my philosophy, focusing on perfect, and I think it lends itself to carving in a lot of other ways. I don't think it has to be I'll use a kind of a carving as an example. This is one of the busts that I carved after Dave's class, and the goal was to carve an attractive older woman. That was my goal, and when I striving for that perfection, it doesn't have to be like a perfect carving. I don't think this is by any means a perfect carving, but when if you've ever been in a Dave Stetson class, he talks about, where do your eyes go? Where do your lips go? What are the proportions of your face? And we're looking at ideal proportions, perfect proportions, dictated by golden ratios and all this stuff. Well, you stick really close to those perfect proportions, and knowing that you're imperfect as a carver, that your blade's not going to be terrible, perfectly sharp, or that you're not going to have everything perfectly symmetrical. You start out with as perfect as you can, and you'll naturally introduce the imperfect pieces as you go. But because you started out on those proper placements, you end up with a half decent carving 9 times out of 10, because you started with a perfect placement, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I think about it. A lot of this involves, developing a really critical eye. I think it's important. I think there's a tendency in a lot of wood carving communities, and this is not a bad thing, but I think this is true in a lot of artistic spaces, that we can over compliment and not be open to criticism, or we don't develop our own critical eye on what we like or what we don't like. And knowing why you like something and why you don't like something are important. So I think that's an important skill. And then seeking out your mentors. This is another big part of my philosophy, and I think it comes from, that upbringing of doing something properly. I don't take any advice unless somebody is qualified to give it. And there's a lot of advice in a lot of areas. Magic community is full of people giving advice that haven't done a show in their life, that don't know what it's like to stand in front of 500 people with you and your prop, knowing that if it fails, you look like an idiot. There is nowhere to go when you're doing a magic trick and you mess up in front of 500 people or 50 people, or your sleight of hand is off and they flash and you flash a move that was supposed to be concealed. There's nowhere to go. And if you don't have those experiences when you're giving advice, I think you're shooting yourself in the foot. So I'm big on finding people that know what they're doing. So mentorship is big for me. And the beauty of wood carving and Woodcarvers Academy and the internet is you don't need to be near your mentors. You've heard me mention Dave several times. Dave didn't sign up to be my mentor. He didn't ask for it, but he is. Every piece that he does, everything that he carves, every word that he says, I am writing down, thinking about, reflecting on, and trying to emulate. And there were 3 mentors in my wood carving journey. There's a lot of them. You have kind of tangential mentors, students of mentors and whatnot. But Lewis Holloway, the carving I showed you, Dave Stetson, and lately it's been Ray Kinman. If you follow Ray on Instagram, Woodcarving Guru, there's something about his work. And everything that they post, everything that they do, I'm studying color, I'm studying cutting techniques. You can do it from photos. And I dive deep in how I think about it, with no concern for originality. And this is kind of like the end of my TED talk here on this, is I don't believe in being original. And that might be controversial, but this came from my magic performance. I believe in copying your mentors as close as you can. Find your influences. A friend of mine had said, try on your influences. And I think that's solid advice. Find the people you emulate, you like their work, and try to copy it. I went through a Lynn Doty phase. That's a Lynn Doty carving. That is I think everybody that started out because of his blog had a Lynn Doty phase. Or Dowdy, I apologize if I'm saying it incorrectly. But I copied everything. And what ends up happening, and these are not my ideas, but I found them to be true time and time again, is I'm trying to copy Dave Stetson as close as I can. I'm trying to copy Ray Kinman as close as I can. I'm trying to copy Lewis Holloway as close as I can. Here's my Lewis Holloway copy. This is my attempt at replicating his style, right? So you can see what you can judge whether I came close. But what happens is you get 25% Dave Stetson, 25% Ray Kinman, 25% Lewis Holloway, and 25% you. And now you're an original carver by default, because no one else has the little bits of the mentors that you find interesting. So originality for originality's sake, I think it's putting the cart before the horse. I think understanding why they do what they do, and then absorbing that. And over time, you will become original. You will become, I like to think that a lot of my pieces that I've been posting, they look a little less like a Dave Stetson carving. They look less in recent years, and they start looking a little more like mine. And in another 10 years, who knows what they'll look like at that point. So anyway, that's that. That's the end of that. So back to the nitty gritty. I thought I'd give some tips geared towards mostly the newer carvers, stuff that I kind of put together to make my life easier. One of the things, sharpening, that we talk about when we're first starting out. When I was first starting, everyone was scary sharp, and you need a Tormek, and you need a Burke system, and you need this, and you need that, and learn to do it by hand. And that was all well and good. And it was important, but this is what I came up with. I had trouble getting a sharp edge on my tools because I couldn't figure out what the angle was, and I got tired of having to go back. So what did I end up doing? I came up with this guy. I don't know who came up with this, but I'm sure I'm not the only one. But this was how I came up with to sharpen my tools. This came from Harbor Freight. This is a buffing wheel without the, like Velcro sticks to this side. But I got a buffing wheel. This is a 4-inch buffing wheel with the shank. And then I got a 4-inch metal disc off eBay. And you see all that stuff on there? That's double-sided tape, rubber cement, adhesives from over the years. I took this, shucked it in a drill, and now I can see an angle. And this was especially important for the gouges. I couldn't figure out what the angle was. Was I too steep? Was I too low? Here, put on some safety glasses, be careful. Don't be foolish, but I can control the speed of this guy. I can keep it moving relatively slow. I can put sandpaper on here, and I can put my tool, and I can see that I'm keeping a consistent angle as I go all the way through. It's worked well for me. I can then take on there's a piece of leather that I molded to the to the thing. Again, coming full circle, all the leather work. I've got so much leather, it isn't even funny. I wish I could show you how much leather I have in my house. It is sad. But I can do the same thing. I can buff. And now this thing is good to go, and I can go through my tools real quick. And I didn't need this whole system set me back maybe 20 bucks. Were there a couple of things along the way that I learned? Yeah, you got to be careful you don't overheat your tool. You can create sparks. I do wear eye protection. I'll put something over my mouth, depending on how much I'm taking off, if I'm taking off metal for my tools. But that's the way I kept all my tools sharp. And I did that pretty early on, and it served me really well. Tool storage early on. I couldn't afford a lot of the tool totes, so I found this. This is a pipe holder. I got it at an antique store for 10 bucks. I wish I could have afforded one of the cool tool totes that I saw everybody carrying, but that wasn't going to happen, and I'm a little too cheap. But this guy came from an antique store, held 9 tools, and worked out perfectly well. Just kept that on my desk. So that kept my tools safe. I still see them all the time. I took an old candle, it's sitting over there now, but an old glass candle that had been empty, and I put it there, and you can put a lot of your stuff inside there. I assume I don't smoke, but I imagine for the pipe smokers, that was to hold your pipe tobacco or other pipe things. I don't know. So there's a tip if you're ever in an antique store. Now I use this guy. Rigged this guy up. This was in a WCI Woodcarving Illustrated issue. I forget the issue number, but 2x4s and a drill press with some 1-inch pipe works well. And I like it looking like this because I learned, I'm almost glad I didn't get those tool totes when I was starting out, because I like to have my stuff in a bag. I like my bag to close up because we travel up into the mountains. We do a lot of hiking. Sometimes I'll take a camping chair out and I'll carve in the woods in silence and peace. And I like having all my tools wrapped up. This is a gun range bag. It worked out to fit perfectly. The tool carrier that I made, it's got pouches on the sides where I keep you can't see all this, but I keep files, rasps, extra stuff in each side. And then the sharpening equipment is on this side for some of the gouge stuff that I can't do when I don't have the drill with me. So I have a strop and everything on this side. So that kind of worked itself out. Now I can just zip it up, shut, and throw it in the back of the car, and I'm not worried about the tools flying everywhere and making a mess. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm kind of weird. There's no, you don't hear anybody saying anything. So I don't know if I'm rambling or talking too much, but.
You're good right now.
All right. You guys
Josh,
have questions? Yeah.
Da Vinci, he says, poor is the pupil who doesn't surpass his master.
Well, I will not.
You're there, buddy.
I dare not say that in front of my mentors. We keep humble, but I mean, if that's not the goal, to get better than your teachers, I mean, I'll say that as a teacher. You know, I got a couple of kids. It's very rare as a teacher that I got to see what my kids did after they left. You know, I taught 9 through 12 math. If they were really smart, I taught them when they were real young, and if they were struggling in math, I taught them when they were older. And very rare that you get to see them come full circle. But every so often, you know, I'd hear of a kid, and I remember, oh, that kid was smart, and now he's in engineering or he's getting a doctorate in math, and I'm like, there it is. You know, he's definitely, and that's a nice feeling. It was a nice feeling as a teacher. So I imagine it's a nice feeling for a lot of you guys out there that, you know, Dave, Bob, anybody that teaches classes, when your student comes back and they've kind of nailed what you've been showing. it was a fun feeling with math. I can only imagine it's a fun feeling with wood carving. I don't know how much people like to see my carvings. If you're on Instagram, you've seen a lot of my stuff already. These are a lot of the Santas that I've been doing. This one, he doesn't have his hat yet, but you know, a lot of Santas around the holidays. My mother-in-law now has come to expect her Santa in her Christmas box. So a lot of Santa stuff. You saw the Lynn Doty work. There's some bigger stuff coming out, like the Ray Kinman stuff. Just finished up this guy. This was in his online video. I'm in an apartment, so I'm kind of limited. I'm jealous of those of you that I see on the video that have basements and garages. You know, like can't afford a house in Florida now with a townhome going for 475 grand. So we're still in an apartment. My neighbors hate me. My neighbors hate me. The amount of noise that I make. I push the limits of what can be done in an apartment room. I'm telling you right now. A lot of busts. A lot of this came, again, classes. None of these are not original. These are Dave Stetson classes. If you get on Woodcarving Illustrated or Woodcarving Academy, you can see these. I'm really pleased with how these things turned out. And the fact that, let me just say, the COVID, you know, I lost my grandmother to COVID, but when I tell you that COVID was one of the best times in history for creatives, I mean, never was so much available online that you used to have to go seek out. You know, I still have the first Woodcarving Academy class was Dave's. Was it Dave's? Our class, Dave? Was that the first one? Still sitting up there on the shelf, and you know, it's wild. This was my first attempt at a caricature. It almost pains me to show you because it's so bad. It's not, it could be worse, but there's so much that I would fix. This idea came from a t-shirt, believe it or not. The t-shirt was called World Traveler. And I would love for somebody, I want to try this piece again. That's with what I know now, I want to try this piece again. I don't know if you guys can tell, but World Traveler, right? He's got the world on his back. And as a hiker and somebody that loves being out in the woods, I love this concept. But this is definitely one I'd like to try again. Anyway, enough of the carvings. Let's dive into the Procreate. How much time do we have, Blake? We okay on time?
Yeah, we're good. We're about 15 till, and again, we can run 3:15, 3:30, or I'm sorry, 4:15, 4:30 if we need to. So you go right ahead.
So I'll go as long as people want to go, but let's get into the drawing stuff. And if you want to bring up the iPad, Blake. So the app that I use for a lot of this digital drawing is called Procreate. Be careful who you tell that to, because people consider procreating something else. And there were many times where my words were not carefully chosen. And I was like, it's an app. It's an app. I promise it's an app.
Hey, go ahead and do share screen and see if it comes up.
You do need an iPad for this. You need an iPad and you need an Apple Pencil. And when I tell you, I've always had a sketchbook. I've drawn again since I was little. The iPad is a real game changer with these Apple Pencils. They're pressure sensitive, so they behave like markers. The whole piece of kit maybe costs you $1,200 for the iPad and this, but it's just a great piece of equipment. So this is what the app looks like when you log in, and you can see each of these is a piece of artwork that was done all on the iPad. So all of this is all digital art, t-shirt designs, things like that. Anyway, if you saw my my hoodie, I've started making some t-shirts for the wood carving community. We can talk about that later, but Dave Stetson's rocking one right now. So these are just fun designs that were specific to us wood carvers. if you're a fan of Marv Kaiser-Satt, another one of the guys that I really respect, he's big into Al Hirschfeld. So I tried a Marv Kaiser-Satt portrait, but in the style of Al Hirschfeld. So anyway, the whole idea of this is I wanted to give you kind of two thoughts as far as drawing and animation goes that I've kind of learned. And again, I'm not Ryan Green. If you've watched Ryan Green's talk, he's a legit Disney animator. I am not. I've just read a lot of books on animation. And one of the things they talk about in animation that I think applies to carvings is asking yourself, how does a drawing read? And so these are all the pens that you have access to. Well, some of these I have purchased, but these are all different pens. So I'm just selecting a pencil here so you can see that it draws like a pencil. So how does something read? I think a lot of our carvings, when we're first starting out, they kind of look like this, right? There's a very straightforward template. You can there's going to be a head, there's going to be arms in the pocket. We might get some daylight in between the arms. We might get some between the legs, but a lot of times they're very square, and this doesn't really read. And what we mean by that is it doesn't. There's no sense of what this image is feeling or it's trying to express. One of the great examples of this in animation uses potato sacks. And the idea is, if I was to draw, a potato sack that looked like this, the minute you see this, you kind of can tell that it's hunched over. It reads very quickly as sad or down, depressed, versus the line of action. Well, this is another term in animation. The line of action is this, right? Versus if you have a line of action that's like this, this reads as happy or excited, and you can look this up online. This is, artists have taken this as a challenge. It's like, how do I squeeze expression out of something as mundane as a potato sack? Can I make it read with an emotion? You might have something that looks like this. I'm making this up as I go here. But maybe this is overly confident. Maybe this is kind of like, I think of like an NFL player doing like a game day dance or something like that, chest up, kind of pointing out at the audience or something. I don't know. But I think it's important to think of, how does your carving read? One of the other ways I think you can do this is if you're making a template for your carvings, look at the silhouette. This is another thing that a lot of animators will do, is they will, you can kind of look at a drawing that you've done, and if you kind of get rid of all the details and you just look at the silhouette, does the silhouette show you anything, right? And you can start to see the change, right? If we turn this head just ever so slightly, okay, it reads, oh, he's wearing a hat. Let's go back here. Each of these is a layer. So if you're familiar with Photoshop, Procreate works very similarly. Each of these is a layer. So I'm really just kind of stacking drawings on top of drawings. If you, it's kind of like tracing paper. So if you drew on top of tracing paper and then you put another piece of tracing paper on top, and I drew on that, I can keep stacking and adding to the drawing without changing the underneath layers of tracing paper. But if I turn this guy to the side, he starts to read a little bit better, and then what if I drop a shoulder and raise a shoulder? Maybe there's kind of a confidence going on. Maybe there is a hand in the pocket. This is not meant to be fine art, but you guys kind of get the idea, hopefully, that I'm not looking at any detail. The detail will add a lot in the face and in the clothing, but how does it read just as a general picture? So once you kind of get that kind of idea, I think, and you draw a lot and you practice, you know, even just on a sketch pad, I think you can bring a lot of that into designing your own ornaments. So I thought I'd kind of show you one of the ornaments that I put together. I don't have a lot of my carvings because I give them away and I sell them. If you're on my Instagram, a lot of people really like the snowman that I did. And it was just a snowman that was based off of a Woodcarving illustrated pattern of a snowman kind of leaning against a sign. And so I wanted to tweak it. So this is kind of how I did that. But I want to show you guys a few examples of what you can think about. So if we were going to do another snowman carving, right? This is the general shape of a snowman. We know that they wear a top hat, and I'm going to do this as a sign, another, for a grandkid or a newborn, right? Let's say you have a snowman. It's a little too big. So you got a snowman holding a sign. So this is not bad. You know, I think if you carve this and you did like a shallow relief kind of thing, you could do amazing things with color here, and it would look really great. No complaints. But it could be better because this, again, it doesn't really read. There's not a lot of expression going on with the carving. So what if we created that line of action here and did it more this way? If you look at a lot of Disney art, you see that Mickey never, almost rarely stands full frontal straight on. He's almost always at a 3/4 angle, and his chest is almost always out, almost proud. You know, you can kind of see the Mickey influence here, right? That's usually the body, but right. So same snowman, but very visually different. We give him his top hat. Again, this is kind of that center line. Right. Maybe I keep the sign. Keep the sign there. Obviously, drawing can get you only so far. You know, as carvers, we have to think about like structural things. Like, I don't know that I would want to carve a nose out like this. The grain's going to be running this way. This might be a very weak part, so I might not do this. I might put the nose on the face, but you know, you have to tweak it. This is just ideas, so I'm not going to judge any of the ideas at this stage. So this reads just a little bit better. These eyes look a little creepy. Let's just get rid of these eyes. So this just reads a little bit more interesting than that guy. What if we wanted it to be a little bit more of an intense statement? So I always love this kind of X shape. And I'll show you what I mean there. So let's say we've got a little snowman here. Again, 3 things here, but I want him to be really excited. So I'm actually going to do this here. What if he's holding the sign? If you've ever seen, what was that movie where he's holding the boombox outside in the rain?
Say anything.
Is that John Cusack? Is that the guy? he's holding it in the rain. And so maybe, this is, again, this is carved in relief. So, you're going to have a little forced perspective out that way. So now instead of a round bottom, we'll kind of give him like the implied feet. So snowmen don't really have feet typically, but we can imply it. And notice I'm being very messy. Like I will clean this up later. So here's my little snowman guy, right? So I will do a bunch of these drawings, one after the other. And then I will find one that I like. So I kind of like this guy. So I will take him, and the nice part about Procreate is that I can grab this whole image and I can copy and paste this image in place. So notice that it got darker. It got darker because it was copied on into another layer. So now I can turn everything off underneath. And now I just have that last drawing. And now I can turn my frame around. I can blow this up, and now I can make this more, lower the opacity. And now I'm going to use this as a springboard. Now I'll take the drawing a little bit more seriously. So I'll do this on another layer. And I'm going to try and expand a lot of the ideas. So I'm going to bring this down even more. And you don't have to do this on Procreate. So, I use it because I really enjoy this digital drawing. I might take, if somebody asks me for this pattern, I can send the pattern. But you can do this with just a white sheet of paper and those tracing papers, just tracing paper that you get from the store. So I'm going to expand the arms. I want a little bit more of this. And I think it'd be really cute if this guy had like a vest, something like that. Again, I'm not committed to anything. So maybe that's there. I'll open up these hands. Again, I'm still being pretty sketchy with this. Now, so it'll look like he's kind of holding it up, but again, this will be all flat. And this is one of the ways, I mentioned that magic kind of lends himself to wood carving. One of the things about Ray Kinman's work that I think really attracts me is that I've never really seen someone be so, the use of perspective, the fact that you can get away with so much depth on something that's flat just by undercutting appropriately, or, having the right forced perspective, just boggles my mind. I don't know. Hopefully this isn't putting anybody to sleep. No. If you did this as a thicker piece, you might be able to add this part. So I'm also kind of thinking of that whole, how does this read aspect? So I would not carve this like this, because then grain would be running this way and this would be very weak. But I might consider adding a piece of wood where the grain is running horizontal and adding this on so it's not as at risk of breaking off. So again, I'm rushing through this a little bit just for the sake of time, because I know we're pushing at an hour. So once I've kind of got this thing, these eyes are really bothering me.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
This is Doug from California.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, I took one of Ray Kinman's classes, and I think I'm just gonna suggest that for you. I think you'd really, really enjoy it. It's a 2-day class for the weekend. I don't know where you live and all that, but.
Oh yeah, no. Well, it's funny you say that because I just did it this summer.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I mean, I'd never been to Northern California, Florida boy, but we did a week-long trip. If you guys get a chance, yeah, he does a great job. It's not cheap, but it's a wonderful experience, and you make a vacation out of it. It really is a wonderful experience. Anyway, so here's the idea. So now I can take this, and each layer should be a little bit more refined, right? So this is a lot less messy than this guy. This was a hot mess. This is less of a hot mess. Now, you do want to be careful. So there is a kind of a thing in animation where you don't want to overdraw it, because you lose a lot of the life that comes from the first few attempts. You kind of overthink it. But once I'm ready to once I'm happy with it, now I'll go in with a brush that's not a pencil. So this is just a monoline brush that comes with the Procreate app. And now I'll go in and I'll just darken all these pieces up. So there's that guy. And now what I'm doing is I'm making what will become the pattern. Procreate is also really nice because you can also you can lay on top of it things that kind of make it appear like paper. So you can experiment with colors. It'll start to kind of act the way colors would on a piece of wood. So if you're not sure, it's like, well, how would I blend orange, or how would I make orange? What would be a good highlight for the color orange? You can experiment here and then bring that to your carvings. Now, I've been using Procreate for about the better part of a year and change. So there is a little bit of a learning curve. I'm not going to lie to you. There's a lot of frustration at the start just because there's so much that this app can do. But once you get it, it's really invaluable. Again, nothing is set in stone. That's the nice part too. If something doesn't look right, I can show you in a second of. So this is kind of like the general idea of where we're at now. So you can see that in the minute I kind of took it away, it looked a little weird there, and it's because I forgot the rest of his arm. Maybe that looks a little bit better. I don't know. There's aspects about it that I'm not crazy about, but you get the idea. So now you can also distort this. So let's say I don't know if this adds anything, but so like here, this kind of looks like he's stepping forward. Almost gives this look like he's got some movement in him just by playing with this distort feature. I don't know that I'd use it, or that I'm crazy about it, but it's there as an option. You can warp things, so I can kind of create something like that. Anyway, that's the original. You can add your text too. So one of the things that I struggle with is if I'm putting text on a carving that I'm making for somebody, figuring out where the text is going to go. So let's say my wife's name is Haley Joe. I've got a wife with the most southern name, but she's from Florida. And I was telling Blake, it's too far south to be southern. Orlando. So. But now I can distort this and make it look like, so it takes the guesswork out of trying to hit those proportions. So now I can take this to the printer. I can print this out. I can scale it down. So I can collapse these two layers. So now it's all one thing. And I can make this smaller. So this will print on 8x11. So I probably want it about that size. Or I can make it much larger and print it and do a much larger relief where I can get really into the painting. I mentioned that you can also play with your paint colors. So let's say I reference this, and so, you know, maybe I want, I don't know, this gives me kind of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer claymation kind of vibes, but you know, you can play with color, or I can do, let's do this here. I can turn all this, I can change colors of multiple things at the same time. So now you can kind of see here in the corner that I just made the entire thing white. And now I can, and again, I'm moving really quickly because I know we're short on time. I just wanted you guys to kind of see some of this stuff. You know, maybe it's white, but I want to do like blue shading. So I can experiment with this undertone, right? So maybe when I go to paint, I'll keep these kind of blues at the bottom. So it kind of gives that dimension. It's a little too big, you can see it. I'm changing the size of the brush here on the left. And you can go through this and you can get this as detailed as you want. And then when you're ready, you can print it out and just start carving, run it through your bandsaw, get your outline, and then start doing your relief stuff. So
Josh,
that's about all. Yeah, go ahead. Any questions?
Yeah, asking for a friend. What brushes are you using? My friend's at that frustrating part of Procreate. Yeah,
so there's a great website called Retro Supply Co. RETROSUPPLYCO. A big thing in Procreate is kind of recreating this this vintage look that you can kind of see on this carving here. So the paper, I'll get to I promise I'll answer the question. So the paper kind of came from that website. And so it kind of mimics what it would be like actually writing on newsprint. But they sell brushes as well. And they have bundles and packs. I don't remember what the name of the pack is, but most of the stuff can already be found in Procreate for our purposes. So if you go down to sketching, for a long time, I just used this Derwent pencil here, and it works really well. I mean, you can, sorry. It behaves very much like a pencil. It looks like a pencil. So I used that for a long time. And then to do the outline, you're just looking for a monoline brush. So each of these brushes are pressure sensitive. So with the Apple Pencil, if I press lightly, it's a thin line. And as I press harder, the iPad's pressure sensors kind of pick up on that change in pressure. So a monoline brush won't do that. It'll just stay the same thickness all the way around. So that's what I'm using. That's under the calligraphy tab. And between those two, that's mostly what I'm using. you can do other things like this is a soft brush. This is like an airbrush, and there's an airbrush tab here. So underneath airbrush, it's the soft brush at the top. And that lets you can change the size over here on the left. And so you can kind of mimic actual airbrushing. And between those, that's most of what I'm doing on this guy. Each one will have its own thing. So this was a t-shirt design that I kind of came up with. This is the monoline brush. I did the exact same thing. And I didn't do any real shading. This right here, this, sorry, you guys can't see what I'm pointing at. This stuff right here, these little dots, those are called halftones. Those came from that website as well. So if I kind of go back, because that one's all layered up. If I kind of go down here to their duplatone, this is what they call it on the website. It mimics retro comic book halftones. So I create shading in that way. So those are kind of the big brushes that I'm using now. But I'm kind of stuck on this like vintage style looking thing. So you can see a lot of these guys were, I was trying to replicate like vintage cartoon characters. So playing around with, so you can see a lot of that halftone work there. Anyway, did that answer your question, Dave?
Hey, Josh.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh, this is Jim Feather. I've been using Procreate for several years now. And one thing that I found that I started out, it really got me interested in Procreate, was being able to make patterns off of my carvings. One thing it does do is you can take a quick photograph of your carving, bring it into Procreate, outline it, and then distort it to make patterns. And if anybody's on the fence about Procreate at all, that makes it a real easy way to make, because I'm one that I'll carve the carving first and then I make a pattern later.
Oh yeah, no, that's 100%. I actually did something similar to that on Dave's latest class. He had us, he wanted us to experiment with the beard. So, and doing different beards. So I took a picture of the carving. So this is kind of what he's saying here. So this is a carving that I did, right? But I can take that picture, use this photo, like he's saying. I can drop the opacity of that photo. And now I've got, I think this is what you were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I do.
That's a great idea, because now you can just take what you've done and you can duplicate it. So now I do this with a lot of my Santas also. I've tried to start getting away from a standard just big beard. Not a big beard, but kind of making them, back to my previous point about how does it read. You know, there's your kind of all your facial features, but you could even take this and I think, okay, what would I change about this Santa? Well, I'd love for the beard to be a lot wider. I was actually trying that for this carving, and it looked wider in my head when I carved it than it did in real life. But I thought it'd be really neat to have this, you know, a very wide, almost obnoxiously sized beard.
Couldn't you take a side picture of the same object and get your side view for a pattern also?
Oh, 100%. Yep. And the nice part about Procreate too is it kind of gives you guidelines as well. So if you get rid of this, I can turn on the canvas and I can create a drawing guide. So it puts grids on it. So if we were doing like a cowboy, just gonna try and do this real quick here. So, you know, you've got your cowboy hat or whatever. It's gonna be the worst cowboy ever because I'm Russian. But
With
right.
the different layers, you know, I would use it to try different arm position and so forth, and then you can freeze and thaw.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. there's just so much potential here for carvers that it's really wild. So now I can take this guy, duplicate him over. It's really easy to make another copy. So now it's like, okay, well, maybe if the hat was bigger or the legs were longer, what would it look like? But now if I got rid of this canvas, a lot of us will just draw straight lines across. So Procreate lets you do that too. So notice that I drew a line and it looks a little wonky. But if I hold the pen still and I tap, it just kind of creates straight lines across. So now, you know, that's the bottom of the brim. Now if I do my side view, like we're saying, you know, that'll be the bottom of his brim there. It'll come across. This will be the top. You know, and you can kind of play around this way. And you know that his arm's got to end here on his waist. Again, this is really, really quick kind of thing, but there's so many possibilities with that. If you're somebody that does, I don't do this kind of work, but if you do like chip carving, you can change your drawing guides to be different kinds of things. So let's say we did like radial. So now this layer is assisted. So it's treating this as a symmetrical point. So anything I do in one is being duplicated in the other. So if you're really into like chip designs, I'm not a chip carver, as you can tell, but you know, you can kind of come up with your own like fractal like patterns here. And there's a lot of fun stuff you can do there. And there's different types of symmetry that it can use. And I'm happy to, you know, anybody that wants to learn more, share everything I know. But so you can do like a horizontal symmetry, you know. But yeah, any other questions? Anybody out there?
Hey, Josh, if somebody wanted to learn Procreate, where would you point them to go learn the process?
That's a hard question. I think a lot just by fiddling around. This is the best bet. I took a class on hand lettering that was using Procreate, and it went through a lot of the tools, and then I just took those tools and translated it. But probably YouTube University, man. You can learn everything on YouTube. You know, there's tons of Procreate basic tutorials out there. Everybody's using it. There's some guys on Instagram also that are doing some crazy things. But I probably just stick with YouTube. A lot of the classes, people have realized that they can make money on making a lot of the classes. So I think the lettering class that I did was like $200 or $150, and it was like a multi-module class. So I learned a lot about the app, and I'm glad I did it. But if you don't have that kind of expendable income, the guy's name was Stephen Coons. I think it's called the Ultimate Procreate course. He does a lot of graphic design. He did some stuff for Times Square all through the Procreate app. And then it was for Coca-Cola and Times Square. So, but that's, yeah, Stephen Coons, that's where I started, but YouTube has tons of videos also.
All right. Any other questions for Josh today? Josh, I'm going to go ahead and cut off the screen sharing.
Yep, sounds good.
Actually, you may have to do it on your side.
Oh, I got to do it on my side. Yeah, people, the pinup thing. So this was actually an artist that I hired. I'll just show you. This is a pinup that I used my wife as inspiration, and I hired the artist to do it in the style of an old pinup girl. She's amazing on Instagram. Her handle is PD and Pinups. So if you're into classic like 1940s pinup art, she does an amazing job. I mean, she just nails that genre, and it's a dying art form that area.
All right. Any other questions for Josh today? All right, Josh. Well, I just want to say thank you for coming on. It's definitely been an eye opener for me as far as being able to use Procreate and what you can do with it as far as design stuff. So I appreciate you coming in and sharing that. That's something that we haven't seen on here before. So I appreciate it. And thank you again for coming in. You're welcome anytime, Josh. If you want to come back and do some other stuff, we'd love to have you. So just keep that in mind. Again, I want to thank you all for coming in today with the International Association of Woodcarvers. Come back next Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll have Isaac Middlemiss on. He's the woodcarving man. Go out and check him out on Instagram and TikTok. I think he's on Facebook and probably YouTube also. So check him out. But he'll be with us next Saturday, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you all for joining us today with the International Association of Woodcarvers.
I want to mess up so we can add it to the blooper reel.
Yeah, we need
man.
I need to say something weird.
Doug, interrupt him 4 or 5 times if you don't mind. No.
Yeah, I want Blake to say Aurora or something like
Arroyo.
Hey,
so when you asked me, I got on. You said you were going to start advertising it. You had said my name. It wasn't last week. It wasn't the week before. It was like 4 weeks back, and it was pretty bad. I was like, "Oof."
Hey, that's the best he's done, man. He's from Tennessee. Give him a break.
what's my favorite one that you kept screwing up, Blake?
And Kenny.
That's it. That's it.
Bruce and Kenny.
Bruce and Kenny.
And it's Ankeny.
Well, he got a lady's name in the middle. It's Ann Kenny.
Yeah. Oh, Ann Kenny. I screw up a lot of stuff. Names are not my forte.
So see, we got all this to add to the end. So it's
I love it. It worked out.
So Josh, whenever you want to go, man, I'll turn it over to you, brother.
All right. Hey guys, my name is Josh Arroyo. You might know me from Instagram as Arroyo Handcrafts. Welcome to the International Association of Woodcarvers. Oh, we had to say what I'm talking about.
Well, you can. I mean,
you don't have to. It's up to you.
Okay.
I have to record it though, so let me get. Oh, I did have recording going. Never mind.
Oh, okay.
Hey, we'll do a second take. We'll see which one comes out better.
All right, sounds good.
That's good.
Doug.
I see Doug like over here.
Like,
no, you did it wrong.
Stop.
Oh man. Hey, that was perfect. Couldn't have done a better 2 takes.
There you go.